Iona's strong, can do loads of things in the gym that a lot of guys can't do. And Iona's had multiple times where she's been doing something and there has been someone who started watching it happen and maybe watched as in like, oh my God, is this going to go well? Or maybe watched to go, oh, this is impressive, I want to see how this pans out. And at the end of it, Iona's clocked the person's watching, the person's been like, good job.
Just like give me a thumbs up.
Do you know what I mean? And it hasn't been done in a creepy way. It's just a human interaction that's positive, and it's not been an end to go and ruin that person's session or go and distract them or try and get into a conversation. It's been an appreciation for the fact that everyone's there to work on themselves.
I'm Ali Heather and this is the That Guy podcast series. What I thought I'd do is bring together a bunch of diverse voices to chat about how to not be that guy and also how to be a better man. We know that male behaviour is making women uncomfortable and we know that it's making women unsafe, but it doesn't need to be this way. So I'm speaking to all sorts of men and women with positive advice on behaviours to avoid and behaviours to follow. Join us for this series across all major platforms. Iona and Will, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I was really keen to bring you in because you both work in physical training. You are both really into the gym and you run your own business. I've been loving what you do, what you put out on social media, the kind of ethic of what you guys do I think is so positive. But for them that haven't come across Zone 1 or yourselves before, could you just tell us a wee bit about yourselves and what you're trying to do?
Yep. So we've had Zone 1 open now for a year. We've both been coaches for between 8 and 9 years. Worked in commercial gyms. Will's worked in a couple of different smaller gyms, and we both had our own studios before opening Zone 1. And our kind of ethos is creating a community space for people to come in, make friends, enjoy fitness, and not kind of find it a tedious task that they have to drag themselves there, but rather find it something enjoyable that they can enjoy with their friends. They can have that community element where people kind of cheer them on. And it's not just a gym, which I know a lot of gyms say, but we do want to create that kind of feel.
That's it. And for me and you, Will, growing up through the gym, I know that was a place I learned a lot about how to be myself, how to occupy a space, what my own personality was, and I met a lot of really cool people. This podcast looks at both how to not be that guy, and we've seen a lot of that kind of guy in gyms, but also how to be a better man. So there's loads of good examples in the gym as well, eh?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the biggest things me and I have discussed this a lot is we've both been very lucky to have positive influences on ourselves from people that we've come across in the gym, both career-wise and our own training-wise, and we've always been able to enjoy that space, and because of that you stay at it, and because you stay at it you get more from it. So we now want to give as much of that back to our community and through Zone 1 and through the people we work with as possible, and that's the main goal.
And something I'm keen to do in this episode with you guys is salvage and save the gym toxic masculinity.
Yep.
I think in popular culture, it's so much seen you're doing bicep curls for the girls. Mm-hmm. And it's if you are hitting the gym and you're into big weights and that kind of thing, there's probably something behind that that's negative. But I've always found the gym a really positive space. Yep. And I'm keen to show, and I think you guys do a great job of that, showing how good and positive and nurturing an environment it can be.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's different gyms though, isn't it? And we've kind of had that conversation before. And generally we think what happens at the top can kind of filter down. So what happens at the top in the management can filter down into the PTs and what they then bring to the gym, which can then impact all the members and who comes in. And that's one big thing with Zone 1 is if there was ever to be any comment that we were not happy with, it would be squashed instantly. So there would never be a culture that allowed any form of misogyny or homophobia or anything like that would not be allowed within our gym. We have a no tolerance rule towards that.
Yeah.
And I do think that maybe in some spaces there hasn't been that, and then people have been allowed to go about inappropriate behaviour and that's been allowed, and then they've just continued it. And that's how it can get quite bad. Yeah,
for sure. The two kind of sayings that come to mind, kind of cliched, is your vibe attracts your tribe. We are very much, we have an exact kind of person we want to work with, and it's not specific to ability level or physical goal, it's effort and mindset and kind of being part of this community and being a good person. But the second one is bad apple spoils the bunch, in terms of if we have this amazing community and loads of people getting a lot of positive benefits from training and exercise, one person comes in with the wrong attitude or they treat someone the wrong way or they just don't go about things right, that leaks. And if it's not stamped out right from the start, that then becomes a new part of your culture, and that's how you are seen and how you're portrayed, and that's the experience that people are going to get within that space.
Interesting. Iona, it was interesting that you went straight for, if you hear misogyny or homophobia, you tackle it straight away.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that we've all seen in gyms, aren't they?
Yeah,
when we
for
talk
sure.
about when we talk about gym spaces, when we talk about don't be that guy, what are the bad behaviours you see for men in a gym environment?
I'd say the most common one is staring. That is one that I think probably every woman who's been in a gym can relate to. That's the most common one we saw when we worked in commercial gyms, was men just staring at women doing their workout. And they might say, oh, I wasn't doing anything, I was just watching, like I have a right to watch. But what they're doing is they're creating an uncomfortable environment for someone who it's probably taken quite a lot to get them to the gym, because it is quite a daunting and an intimidating space. So if someone's then watching you, it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, even if you're not. And it makes you feel like you don't belong in that space.
Yeah, like even just staring at someone is a form of harassment. So making someone uncomfortable in that space, everyone's in the gym for the same reason, and that reason is to better themselves. As soon as someone has that negative influence on the space and their kind of how they perceive that space ruins that opportunity for them, they might feel like they have to go elsewhere. And I obviously mentioned staring, but it kind of quite often in these big gyms goes further than that in terms of unsolicited advice, or even in some cases people putting their hands on other people without consent and kind of leading into, oh, well, you needed help with this technique, or you were doing this the wrong way. But unless it's asked for, it can make someone extremely uncomfortable, and like I said, can ruin that experience for them in whole.
Well, let's start there with staring. Let's start as that, because that's something that you definitely see everywhere.
Yeah.
And also it's something that I know a lot of my male friends feel uncomfortable about. Like one of my pals says, when you are in gyms and there's like gorgeous women doing really vigorous exercise next to you, he says it's like being in a ship at night with a lighthouse nearby. It's like it's all you can sort of see, and it's like it's in your periphery. And so he's just like, where do I look? Where do I look? And I sort of think, like, if he's thinking, oh God, I want to make sure I'm not making this woman uncomfortable, he's probably all right.
Yeah, for sure.
But with the staring, so I'm quite comfortable in the gym, I quite enjoy that space, but if someone was just eyeballing me really intensely in any environment, I'd really struggle to continue to enjoy myself.
Yeah, for
I'd get tremendously self-conscious, so the idea of just staring at somebody being a neutral act, which you do see it presented as, like, well, I'm just looking, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Being stared at is quite an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, being stared at when you are, as you say, in a particularly kind of public space, when you are maybe sweating, when you're maybe working hard, you can feel quite vulnerable already.
Yeah.
And then to have somebody really eyeballing you, which is so common. And it does come from a kind of controlling space, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. We had, when I worked in a commercial gym, we had someone who got countless complaints from people. One of our members actually complained about this guy who we had, one of the machines was upstairs that people would tend to use. So most of the machines were downstairs, but one of the machines was upstairs. And this guy would sit on one of the cardio machines and just stare directly at you when you were doing your workout. And I remember having it when I was training clients, and I would be like, right, let's move because this person is staring. Got quite a lot of complaints from people. One of our other members said they complained because they'd seen him staring at two younger girls who looked like they were maybe 18, 19. And most times that he was in, he would be just sitting staring at someone.
And these, when I was going to the gym as a young man for the first time, it was quite an intimidating environment. I think that's fair to say. Most people there seem to know what they're doing. There seems to be pre-existing cultures you've got to try and figure out. But I didn't have to deal with any of that headwind that being a woman accessing that kind of space would do. When did you, as a man, when did you start to realise that there was a real difference in the way men and women experience gyms when they first come in?
Probably quite early on, to be fair. Same as you've just mentioned there, even now with years of experience in the industry, stepping foot into a new gym or a bigger gym can be quite daunting, and that's without the thought of someone staring at you the whole time. Obviously, I've had friends, and me and Iona have been together since not far off the start of me starting in that industry. So I've heard about it and I've witnessed it pretty early on. And yeah, it's obviously something that needs to have something done about it as well.
Do you think, because we've talked about the extreme cases of a guy turning up on a cardio machine, almost going to them to stare at people, that's his main motivation. But there's a whole middle group, isn't there, of guys who will kind of linger around machines and do a lot of kind of checking women out and visibly checking women out and kind of talking about them in that space. Does that chime with your experience?
Yeah, I've definitely witnessed it. I've probably not had as much awareness of it because it's not been me affected, which is obviously a very selfish thing to say, but I've definitely seen it in certain cases. And I think in a space like that, like I said, with myself and Iona, we have a very small community and we very much want to take care of each individual person. However, in a bigger space like that, sometimes it goes unnoticed, or maybe there's so many complaints and kind of small things that are maybe seen as unimportant that it just kind of let go. Whereas it has to be something done by people who have more power within that space, whether it's the staff or the coaches or whatever else, to make sure that it's cut out right from the beginning.
And that's it. I think it's such a useful learning point, this, in terms of male entitlement, because it's such a clear line. We know the difference between glancing around the gym, which we all do, and staring. But then people will say, oh, I wasn't, I'm just looking, what's the problem there? And we know there's a difference. And the thing is, people crossing that line, I think, know there's a difference too, but they give themselves plausible deniability. But that's where this dangerous kind of increasingly extreme behaviour tends to stem from, when that behaviour begins and it goes unchecked. So let's move on to that next thing, which is physically putting your hands on women in the gym. Now, this is something that I think because I grew up in quite a small area, we had quite a small gym, and I just didn't see this happen, but so many women have told me about men who will just introduce themselves into a space and correct the women's form, putting their hands on them. Tell me about that.
I mean, you do see it quite a lot in commercial gyms. I've witnessed it quite a few times. We have a member who actually was saying that she was doing an exercise where her feet had to go into a TRX, which is like, it hangs from a machine. So her feet would go in that. It was a core stability exercise. And she was working out with one of her friends, and a guy came over and he was insistent on lifting her feet up to put them in this TRX. And she was like, no, it's fine, I can do it. He was like, no, grabbing her feet. He put her feet into it after her saying, no, it's fine, I don't want my feet in there. And then her friend was going to put her feet in, and he just walked away. So he wasn't doing it to be helpful. He wasn't doing it to help both of them. He was doing it to just help this one person, which was obviously, she was like, well, you were obviously being creepy by doing that. Just trying to be handsy, but obviously she was then quite firm of, no, I don't want you to do that. So that must be why he then walked away. But you do see a lot of like men spotting women squatting and maybe holding them, which you never need to do. We are constantly spotting people in the gym. Your hands shouldn't touch the person, the bar, anything. You'll be there in case they fail the lift, but you're not doing anything to them. You'll see people holding people's waists or touching them in inappropriate places to spot them, which is just completely unnecessary from a safety standpoint more than anything else. But it is just an opportunity almost for someone to try and, I don't know, touch someone without being asked to, or without asking.
Yeah, sometimes it's obviously just that. What's that saying? It's for PDA, public display of affection. When you see that in the gym, is another thing altogether. But sometimes you'll see that just a little bit too much in commercial spaces. People
usually
hands
couples,
on each other or sit-ups and kissing in the middle.
Do you remember? I was going to say that the couple that, like, every time he went down to the bottom of the bench press, she would kiss him. Yeah, a little bit too much. But obviously what Iona's mentioned there is a completely different thing altogether, where it's unconsensual touching of someone that, whether they needed it or not, is a completely different question altogether. Because
we've experienced that as men. Like, now and again, you will get like the big alpha of the gym. Come like, I'll spot you on that, son. And sure. Like, I've been there with my sort of dumbbells, and he's basically doing the lift for me with his biceps. I'm not sure I'm learning loads for this, but cheers, big man. And it is so there's something about the kind of alpha domination thing, where it's like, I will go to whoever space I want.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like he was kind of dominating me and letting me know that, like, this is his gym. And he'll do what he wants. But it's even more aggressive when it comes to women, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I had a friend who had a PT, and she came home from her first PT session, because I lived with her at the time, and she said, when I was squatting, he was holding my hips. Is that normal? And I was like, no. I wasn't a PT at the time. I hadn't qualified at this point. And I was like, no, that's absolutely not normal. No one should ever hold your hips when you're doing a squat. But she said, oh yeah, it did make me feel quite uncomfortable, but I wasn't sure if that was what PTs do. And it's absolutely not. That should never happen.
If you had the chance to step in and stop a woman being sexually assaulted, would you?
100%, right?
Thing is, many of us have had that chance and did nothing.
Because every time a guy trolls a woman for her looks,
or grinds against a girl on the dance floor,
or leaks nude of their girlfriend,
And we let it slide because it's just banter. That encourages some men to take it further.
Putting women at risk of sexual violence.
So next time you see a mate saying, she get it, or not taking no for an answer,
Have a quiet word and help keep them away from trouble.
Don't be that guy that just stays silent.
Speak up and help stop sexual violence before it starts.
So you've both had a long time as PTs in commercial gyms.
Yeah.
And it is a space where you are making yourself vulnerable. I've been PT'd before, found it a really positive experience. I think it's broadly a very good thing. But it's a space where you do make yourself vulnerable. You do have intimate one-on-one connections with a different person who's in a professional environment. And there's a lot of trust there, but there's not a lot of oversight. Is that a position you ever saw kind of misused?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Whether someone's got into that position or not for the right reasons, whether they've trained to become a PT because it looks like the ideal lifestyle, or they've done it to try and pick up women or whatever, you definitely see, especially in these bigger gyms where it is monitored less, people who are using that as a way of not building a business, not helping people with their fitness or their strength or their coaching, but using it as a way of almost elevating themselves and kind of maybe having a bit more of an in for meeting women and then using that as an excuse then to use it as a bit of a kind of, a platform.
That's really interesting. So like a professional PT would get into the game in order to basically have like back-to-back meetings with good-looking women
Quite
and
possibly,
have that kind of influence over them.
I think the barrier to entry to become a personal trainer and work in the fitness space is so small.
And there's no in dentistry, there's like a board that makes sure that you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
People can complain into that. You then get audited. That doesn't happen with PTs. Once you qualify, and especially, if you're working in a commercial gym and you're self-employed within that space, they're not keeping an eye on you, So really, PTs could do anything. And that can sound quite scary because there are some obviously incredible PTs, and there's some people who they're in it because they care and they want to make their client's life better. But it is quite scary that it can be an 8-week course and then someone's qualified.
Yeah.
And then they have all that control and that power when it is a really vulnerable position for clients to be in.
For sure, and I guess you step foot into that as the client's perspective. You step in because you've got someone with a qualification who's got social media proof that they can do the job that you want them to do, but that doesn't absolutely guarantee that person is also a good person and is not going to take advantage of the kind of space that you're stepping into in the gym.
That's really interesting because you didn't, well, as a general thing, you didn't start going to the gym because you feel amazing about yourself.
Yeah.
So you're going in there in a vulnerable position already. And it sounds like it's pretty easy to be a cowboy in that environment.
Yeah, for sure. I think PT gets quite a bad rap for it, to be fair.
Yeah.
And obviously we want to be an influence on the other side of it and make sure that's not how coaches and personal trainers are seen, but I think there always will be an element, same as every industry.
Yeah.
In fact, you've had to go away and start from the ground up and build an entirely new space for that. I know, talking about looking a certain way, I know when I was a young man, I was really looking for guidance and I really got self-conscious about my physique and I got mad into just loads of sit-ups, loads of push-ups, and I did look sort of immaculate in a Peely Wally Chuchter way. I didn't know the health and the well-being side of it.
No.
It was all about try and train for how you look.
Yeah.
And I think that as much as I've moved on and I've matured, and it sounds like you guys have moved into a much more mature and healthy space, we are seeing a big drive online of the body on a man is much the same as the car or the money. And it's like a big part of the status is having the abs and having the arms. Did you see that reflect, that online desire for a certain look for men? Did that reflect into the gyms that you were working in? Did you see that arrive in the commercial space?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you feel like you kind of were aware of that at times.
Maybe not as
but
much as you would be.
I think the biggest thing for me was I don't think there's anything wrong whatsoever with anyone, regardless of gender or relationship status, whatever, wanting to take pride in how they look.
Aye.
I think it's everyone's own personal opinion and people value it differently. But taking pride in how your body moves and how you look and stuff isn't a negative thing. But I feel like for a lot of people, the further you get into that and that becomes a bit of an obsession, the less you can appreciate how you are in good shape because of the kind of where the boundaries are set in terms of people in Hollywood or the magazine covers you see of bodybuilders and these crazy physiques out there.
And
So that
even
becomes an
Instagram
expectation. Yeah, for sure.
being
Social
so
media.
edited. And that does create this unrealistic expectation for men and women in terms of how they should look, you know. And it can, you can see that can then lead into these insecurities, which can come out toxically towards themselves or other people.
Massively. Let's just, like, something that struck me as really wild was, Will, you were saying you're effectively body shamed for not looking enough like a PT.
Yeah.
Like, you're a big, strong laddie, but folk were saying, oh, you don't look like a PT and that kind of thing.
Sure. That definitely, I feel like there's probably a kind of ideal physique that guys have in their head because of what's placed on them in terms of, like Iona said, social media and the culture within gyms and stuff like that. I definitely have felt it over the years, and I feel like over the last few years I've focused more on performance and kind of how I feel and long-term health and building strength and fitness rather than just the aesthetics of I want to look a certain way. But for a long time that was definitely something I felt was I need to just work on looking this way because that's what's expected of me. And I guess it just took a little bit of maturity as I've been in the industry long enough to go, do you know what, it's not what's important to me, it's not what's going to give me fulfillment.
For sure, but also like the biggest you've been muscle-wise was the least healthy you've been.
Oh yeah, for
you know,
sure.
after lockdown, you put on tons of
Yeah.
muscle, tons of weight, and you couldn't run the length of yourself.
Yeah.
You felt so unhealthy. Mentally, you didn't feel good.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't fit.
The best thing that probably happened for me in that scenario was seeing people who looked incredible because of their approach to fitness and the things they were doing and potentially taking, feeling like utter shit. And seeing that it was not good for their health, it wasn't good for their mindset, and seeing, wow, that's a physique that I thought that I needed to have or kind of work towards, but that person hasn't gained anything from this other than how other folk are seeing them physically. It isn't giving them better relationships, it isn't making them more money or building their business or whatever else. They've got to that thing and it's just giving them not very much other than negatives.
It's empty, man. And that's the thing that I'm so keen for younger lads to understand is that being healthy, being strong, good things. Like
Yep.
the discipline of going to the gym regularly and then eating better to kind of inform that training. These are all great things. And like the community I got out of going to gyms, always really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But there is that particular brand of looking a certain way as the entire end goal and the purpose is quite dangerous. And it's a false god. You know, it doesn't get you anywhere joyful.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I think it's a positive thing for people to want to impact and have a good influence on how they look. I don't think there's any shame in it whatsoever, whether it's just for your own self-worth and how you feel or your confidence, or whether it is for you want to feel like you're more attractive to whoever you're trying to attract. But we've also got to remember it wasn't that long ago where gyms were only a space for bodybuilders.
You know, there was all these kind of things that then meant like women can already be scared of going to the gym and getting like bigger and getting bulky and all that kind of thing because they've grown up with that narrative almost. So then if you can help someone getting into the gym and help them getting stronger and fitter and everything like that, if they're then going into the gym and then instantly being put off by someone staring at them or someone making an inappropriate comment or someone commenting on an Instagram saying they look like a man, that it's just taking a step backwards.
Yeah,
you know?
let's get into that because I mind it was one of those freakishly great moments of my life where I was having breakfast in a hotel in New Zealand. I was over there for work and all these tremendously strong lassies suddenly sat down all around me. It was the All Blacks female rugby team.
No way.
And they'd no long battered England in the final, which so these are heroes of mine, you know. I'd watched the final, I thought they're amazing, and the winger that scored one of the winning tries sat at my table, we're getting a blether, and these women are some of the most strong, successful, powerful, agile, fast women on earth.
Yep.
And I was chatting to them, and early on in the chat, and it was just a general chat about how class it is to batter England and stuff. They were they were saying, but the Instagram comments we get, the way that guys sometimes respond to us. To be fair to them, not so much in the rugby spheres in New Zealand. But they were saying when they travel, when they go around, that kind of thing, the chat they get off men is so often.
Yep.
Like,
I mean,
I find like the Instagram comments is like, who could ever go out with a woman that could like beat you up kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Insecure on behalf of the guy commenting it though. Do you know what I mean? It's not a reflection of that woman whatsoever.
See that? You saw that in the Olympics this year. You know, there was so much body shaming for women. And like we were saying, you know, you'd never get someone who wasn't intimidated by a woman like that making a comment like that. That is insecurity. But it's easy when the comment is made towards you to not see it in that way, you know. And I think that's the issue is you could be, like you say, when they're surrounded by other rugby teams, there's no comments made like that because that is the norm in that culture. Like, it's the norm for women to be strong and to be able to do crazy things. But when you then go into, and I've heard a lot of people saying that when I'm surrounded by the people that I go to in the gym and everything like that, I feel strong, I feel empowered. But maybe when I'm outside a space like that where it's not as common for women to have muscles, I feel insecure. When actually they're going to be, like, people will be looking at them and idolizing them to, in a sense of being like, wow, that's incredible, because it takes a lot of work to get there.
Hugely.
But people do feel insecure because it's still different.
Yeah, and it's still men policing women's bodies because we think we have the right. It's still so ingrained, and it's a culture shift that some of us are experiencing. But a lot of people are still there where they think, nah, like, I have the right to a woman's attention, a woman's time, and if a woman looks in a way that I don't think is the right way for a woman to look, I totally have the right to go and tell her. You were asking some of your clients, weren't you? Some of your, is it clients the word?
Yeah, members, clients.
Okay. You were asking some of your members, some of your female members, about stuff men have said to them. Do you want to share some of that with us? Because it is.
This happened to two people very recently within our space we work very closely with, who have had female relatives of theirs comment on, like, oh, it's really good to see you going to the gym and stuff like that, but why are you focusing so much on lifting weights? Like, that's only going to have a negative impact on the way that you look and all that sort of stuff. The person's not even necessarily lifting weights to change the way they look. They're doing it for, like you mentioned earlier, the discipline, for the lifestyle, for long-term health benefits and injury prevention and all these different things. But there's a stigma still attached to that, where other people, regardless of male and female, in a lot of cases will comment on, shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, with no understanding other than just a preconception or maybe a bias.
Yeah, because men needed to be big and strong and women needed to be tiny.
Petite,
But it's funny because a lot of men saying, you look like a man. Most men don't look like the way that you're saying, you look like a man. Most men don't look like that. You know, that is just a stereotype or a misconception where women aren't allowed to have muscles, you know. And, like, people getting told if they have, like, big, strong legs, men calling their legs fat, for example, which has happened. It's happened to me as well. I've been told that before. And again, it was definitely stemming from someone's insecurity of the fact that I was strong, you know. And it's that whole feeling, like you say, feeling the right to comment on the way that someone looks because you feel like you have the right to. When I would never even think of commenting on the way someone looks. You know, I would never even think of saying, oh, well, you have skinny legs. I would never have said that. You know, it's just not even, but it's not something I've been brought up to think that I can do.
So, Iona, you put up on your Instagram stories asking women members of your kind of setup what experience they've had with men in the gym, and you got some class responses. Do you want to share some of them?
Yeah, we had some very funny stories. One of them I was actually at, but one of our members actually reminded me of, where we were doing one of my, like, I do fitness classes with people, and I've kind of always ran them from being in commercial spaces all the way through to our space now. And we were by the front doors in the gym that we worked in, which is like big glass. It's a big glass wall and glass doors. And it's quite common for people to stand at the windows and stare in. But this guy had been staring in for like 10 minutes, 10 minutes. And we were all really uncomfortable, kept making comments, kept looking, because we thought, you know, if you look back at them, maybe that'll make them leave. Nope, didn't. So one of my clients at the time, she pinned herself out the gym, and you couldn't hear anything. You could just see her arms going, you could tell she was shouting, but you didn't know what she was saying. And then I just saw her point aggressively down the road, and this guy just like slump off, like head down, because she'd essentially told him to fuck off. And I mean, she is amazing, because I was like, I didn't feel I could do that in that situation because I worked there. I felt like, will that get me a complaint or something like that, which it shouldn't. That should never be the case. But it was great having someone who was like, nope, I'm not accepting this, outside screaming at him.
No, that's fucking class.
It was great.
But it is like, so that thing of like, it takes a certain person to do that.
Yes, for sure.
And also like women often tell me about that thing of like, you don't know how safe you are to intervene, because this guy, if he's already hanging outside a gym with his nose up against the glass staring, like
what's he gonna do?
He might do something mental. Like his behaviour's already beyond the pale. Like he already knows he's acting out with social norms. So how safe are you to go in that situation? Like absolutely fair play to your pal.
Definitely. And I've said that to you before. There's definitely times where I would want to say something, but I don't know if I'm going to get a punch in the face or something. You know, you don't know what's going to
Massively.
happen. And like the difference is that in a situation like that, if someone was making you feel uncomfortable, if a woman was making you feel uncomfortable, you know that you are however much stronger just naturally.
Yes.
I'm super strong, but I don't know if I could beat a guy in a fight. You know,
Not that I ever want to physically fight a woman in the gym.
Just to make that clear, yeah, that would be a bad thing. Just for audience, just for absolute
What not to
clarity,
do.
bad thing.
but that's the thing is, you might want to say something and say something back, but you don't know if you are safe. You don't know if someone is going to turn around or if they're going to follow you out the gym, or, you know, especially when it's your workplace. Someone knows you're going there every single day. You know?
I guess that's the whole conversation, is like you should never have to weigh up what might happen in a situation, because that shouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And it's obviously, it's quite fortunate that you had someone in that group who was happy to go and say it, because then everyone would just continued through that situation.
And she knew that we were
feeling
all there.
horrible and,
You know, we were all there if something had happened, you know.
You got jumped on the street.
Yeah, we're ready. We're training for this. But that's it. There is always a worry of what is the response going to be, you know. And I think quite often, and we've had this conversation before, the response will be aggressive. You'll be called rude, or, you know, it's expected that women are polite and that they respond politely. And there have been times that things in the gym have happened to me and I have been very polite. And on reflection, I've regretted it. But in the moment, it's very against my nature to be like blunt and to be rude. And I find that really hard to do. And that's something, as I've gotten older, I find I'm getting better at doing. But you know, sometimes I would tell people in the gym stories and the guys would be like, you were literally chatting to that guy like nicely. You know, they would be like, you're saying he was being such a creep, but you were being nice. And I was like, because I didn't feel like I couldn't not be. And you never know what's going to happen.
Massively.
You know?
And that's why it needs to not be on women to police the space. And that is why it's so important to hear conversations like this, because I think we all do know what good and bad behaviour is. And I think that encouraging... Let's get on to this then. So there is a thing where some men are now feeling uncomfortable going near women in the gym at all. As like, you got yourself in a bit of a pickle with this.
Yeah, so before I was a personal trainer, I was training in like a nice leisure centre, you know, near my house at home. And I mean, I've had quite a few stories like this, but this one in particular, I was doing a bench press, and when I was re-racking the bar, I put one side in, and as I was putting the other side in, one side fell, and as it fell, it pulled the other side down, so the bar landed on me. And I was struggling under the bar, and then I looked up to have a look, and it was all guys in the gym. Every single one of them wasn't looking at me. They were all looking away, like, we've not seen it, when someone had definitely seen it. But I think in that situation, that probably was people being like, well, I don't want to go and approach, I don't want to be a creep, when actually that was somewhere that I could have done with some help.
Because you're like a visibly strong woman, you know what you're doing in the gym, and these guys are in a leisure centre. It's like a bunch of dads who are just I don't really want to get involved.
Exactly.
But so that's it. We do need to move beyond that, because I understand where that's coming from, and it's coming from a perfectly good space on their part. But it's that thing of we need to be not ruin perfectly healthy interactions in a gym because of creeps.
Yes.
That's one of the examples of a time where you're being a good person by stepping into that person's space and helping out.
So give me the golden rules. Give me if you see that kind of thing happening, how do I, as a guy who's very happily in a relationship, has no desire to be a creep, and it is of the age where I'm more worried about looking like a creep, how would I go into that situation and get out of it? What would be if I see someone
helping someone if
I see someone that looks like they're struggling in the gym?
Firstly, ask yourself, if this was a guy, would I help them?
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
we had this discussion the other day.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think it's like whether or not it's someone's technique and form, like, because that's normally where you'll find guys will go over and help without, like, unsolicited advice will generally come from someone coming over saying, you probably shouldn't do that like this. But if they said to themselves, would they say that to a guy? They probably wouldn't. You know, I mean, they most likely wouldn't. Whereas if it's spotting someone and you see that they're maybe looking like they're struggling and they might look like they need a wee hand, if it was a man doing that, you probably would go over and stand close by just in case, you know, and then if they failed it, you'd help them lift the rep up. But with the advice front, you do generally find men give women advice, men tend not to give other men advice, you know. So I think if you can like have that quick checklist in your head of like, if this was a guy, would I do it? Yes, then do, you know?
That's not bad. That's not a bad piece of advice. I think that's fair.
When we had that conversation the other day as well, we were saying that like you've previously said throughout this chat, is looking at other people in day-to-day life isn't the offence, it's the staring, it's the encroaching. Iona was given an example of, and that's happened multiple times, Iona's strong, can do loads of things in the gym that a lot of guys can't do. And Iona's had multiple times where she's been doing something and there has been someone who started watching it happen and maybe watched as in like, oh my God, is this going to go well? Or maybe watched to go, well, this is impressive, I want to see how this pans out. And at the end of it, Iona's clocked the person's watching, the person's been like, good job.
Just like give me a thumbs up.
Do you know what I mean? And it hasn't been done in a creepy way. It's just a human interaction that's positive, and it's not been an end to go and ruin that person's session or go and distract them or try and get into a conversation. It's been an appreciation for the fact that everyone's there to work on themselves and people have different ability levels, and it's okay to appreciate that and even show your appreciation, but it's understanding and having empathy towards the fact that some people might not be particularly accepting of that, especially different stages in their fitness journey.
But it doesn't need to be a conversation. Like, that doesn't need, they didn't come over and then say, wow, that was amazing. How, that would have probably then made me feel uncomfortable. They didn't. They just went like that.
Yeah, it was a thumbs up off the gym.
And that was that. That was just because I think we shouldn't be getting rid of human encounter. Like, the gym should be somewhere where you can speak to people and you can have normal conversations. You can have passing conversations that are just normal. There's nothing creepy about them. Men can speak to women, women can speak to men. That it doesn't need to be anything more sinister.
Because that's it. I think deep down we already know.
Yeah.
We already know what's good behaviour and what's bad behaviour. Yeah. But it's just this kind of like this kind of online discourse. Like, you can't say anything anymore. Can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And there is that thing of perfectly nice people now get the fear of, I better not get involved at all lest I be branded, lest I be cancelled. And there's no need for that because, like you say, ask yourself, would I say the same to a man? Would I do the same to a man? It's not a bad checklist.
Yeah.
But and also, sitting on a cardio machine staring at women. Yeah. Sitting outside the gym staring in at women. Bad.
Well, that's it.
I think we know it's bad.
No one really needs to be told that.
And that's the thing is, if you're someone who's thinking, I don't want to be a creep, you're probably not being, because these people who are doing these kind of things, they're not thinking about that. They're not thinking about whether they're making someone feel uncomfortable. They feel that they're entitled to do what they're doing and they're not questioning that. Whereas if you're someone who is thinking, that person's technique maybe looks like they might hurt themselves, I want to say something, but I don't know whether I should. If you are going to do that, go over and say, do you mind if I give you some advice? If that person says, yes, I don't want any advice, then you leave it.
Yeah.
But if that person says, well, actually, this maybe, like, this was feeling a bit funny, and you give them a little bit of advice and then you leave, that's nice, that's helpful. Yeah. That could really help someone in their journey, So one of our members' friends was training in a commercial gym, not one that we've ever worked in, but they were training in a commercial gym and they were coming out of the changing rooms and there was two PTs having a conversation very loudly about one of the PT's girlfriends, and they were being quite disrespectful. So she, whilst passing, said, I don't think this is appropriate. Like, you're speaking very loudly and the things that you're saying are not very nice. They then told her she shouldn't be listening in. It was their conversation. To which she said, I can't not hear you. You're almost shouting. And then they proceeded to follow her to the machine that she was using. They both had their hands on the machine. They were staring at her the whole time she was working out and just really making her feel really uncomfortable. And, that's people who are working within a gym. It's it's disgusting to see that,
Aye, totally. Like, so in terms of positive interventions, like positive interventions is something I'm quite big on, like looking at ways to reach into a space as a man and try and just de-escalate things.
Yep.
Like Will, yourself, what in a gym, what can people like us do to positively intervene when we see these kind of situations or before they even start to emerge?
Yeah, I guess unfortunately, guys will tend to take advice a little bit better on this sort of stuff from other guys. But we also have an opportunity, as whether it's someone you work with or a friend or someone you just see within a space like that, to say, even if it's going to be an awkward conversation to have and pull someone up on their behaviours or what they're saying, it's going to be less awkward than seeing someone's experience in that setting ruined because of something said inappropriate or an action that's been taken that's inappropriate. It's also going to be a lot less awkward than seeing your friend or your colleague suffer the repercussions of being that guy and having done that thing because no one said anything because it was a wee bit awkward. So I guess it's speaking up.
Yeah, but even as little as saying, mate, I think you might be feeling making them feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Something as small as that.
In a situation like that, I think it has to be a little bit more front foot in terms of being like, this is inappropriate. Like,
Right.
regardless of whether it's your place of work or not, these conversations shouldn't be having. The person that's pulling you up on this is probably right. Maybe we should talk about it in a bit more of a private setting. Got to get something off your chest. But
Yeah.
just in general, with all these sort of things, when it comes to how someone is talking, especially a guy talking about a woman or approaching a woman or making a woman feel uncomfortable, I think as other guys, we have a great opportunity to pull them up on that and make a bit of a difference.
And that's the thing, like, I'd want it. Like, I've not been perfect my entire life and never put a foot wrong. Like, I've spoken disrespectfully to people. I've persisted asking somebody out when they're no interested and that kind of thing. And what you always want in those situations is a pal to be like, mate,
Yeah, for sure.
For
Leave
sure.
that, leave
you
that.
don't change if you don't know to change.
Yeah.
totally. And like
know?
that, like it's a caring act. It's a friendship
Yeah.
act. And because it is, you're putting yourself out there. You're risking yourself to say to somebody, I don't think that's spot on. I don't think that's the kind of behaviour you want to be doing. Like, it's a risky thing to do. But you want your friends to take risks to
100%.
help you learn, help
Yeah.
you grow, help you develop.
Yeah.
And you become a better version of yourself for it. So it
Yeah,
is,
for
it's a caring act.
Yeah.
I think, as much
Yeah.
as it is, like you say,
No,
it's a
definitely.
tricky one to get right. And even it's like intervening, we won't always get that right.
I was
Yeah.
going to say you'll learn, and also everyone reacts to things differently. So you might intervene with one person and they might take it really well and say, actually, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't be doing that. Someone else might be very aggressive about it. But even if they have responded like that, hopefully you would hope that they'll go away and self-reflect on it,
Yeah.
and that will help to change their mind and the way that they're thinking and their actions.
Putting it
Yeah.
back to like a weird gym analogy, just because I'm a loser, you wouldn't watch someone doing a squat really badly and know it was wrong and let it get worse and worse and worse and build to a point where it was really hard to break down and start again. You would try and stop it right at the source and you would try and fix it from there. Like you would with a friend saying something inappropriate, you wouldn't wait till those actions and what they were saying escalated to a point where they'd gone too far and they'd done something which had impacted someone and then be like, oh, by the way, this is the point, or wait till they got in trouble or done something wrong. You should, even if it's going to be difficult, intervene as quickly as possible because that's the easiest time to stop it.
That was a perfect
that was
PT
perfect.
parable.
Love
You should bring out a book of those. Like all of life's problems,
Bring
but all
everything
based
back.
on
Back to the
exercise.
gym.
When one is bench pressing, one would not. And low. Sharp. So, no, that was really, really beautifully put, man.
That's
really
very
beautifully put. So, like, we we have talked a wee bit about gyms as if they're a homogenous space, but of course that's not the case. Like I grew up in like going to like a relatively wee gym in a fairly small Scottish town, but I've also trained at big commercial gyms. But when I was travelling a lot, you can get these commercial gym memberships. We can use gyms all around the country. Phenomenal. But you do bounce in and they do have very different cultures.
Yep.
One thing that kept on happening to me was people offering me steroids. It's such a big part of the culture of those spaces.
Yep.
And for young folk who are tuning in, listening to this, young men that are thinking about making some gains, steroids does seem like a pretty common thing. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do. Like, why not engage with steroids?
I guess that was a big thing that I came up against when I'd been in the industry for a wee while, was people that I looked up to in the space that were either working there or just using the gym. Big guys would quite openly, if you got to know them a bit better, talk about that. And it became a thing where I'd brought that up to Iona, like, I think it might be something I kind of lean into. And to be honest with you, Iona was probably one of the only people at that point who I was comfortable enough to talk about it and who would say, it's not the way, like, do not do it. There's a lot of negatives you haven't thought about and stuff.
Especially at that age, you know.
For sure. And I think for a long time it was probably in the back of my head of if I stop enjoying the gym, or if I stop making progress, or if I get really, really obsessed with one specific goal, maybe that's something I lean into.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate at that time to then see the negative effects of these, not sure what you'd call them, chemicals, hormones and stuff like this, on people that were completely detached from just how they look. So someone might have looked amazing, and from my perspective as a young guy in the industry, I was looking at him like, wow, this guy's built like a Greek god. But then seeing behavioural changes, seeing kind of dysfunctional relationships, seeing fluctuations in moods and stuff like this, it was very much for me enough to go, do you know what, there might be a positive in terms of how you look, but the negatives definitely kind of negate it for me.
Yeah, so steroids, particularly in terms of it does make you more aggressive.
Yeah.
And I used to, like, the biggest steroid gym I ever went to, I remember vividly, a man's partner, like a woman came down to the gym to try and speak to him about something, and he completely lost the rag. He chucked weights across the gym, he was screaming at her, and no one else in the gym did or said anything. He was a huge guy.
Yeah.
Everyone is absolutely massive. Kind of apart from me, like elf on the shelf over there. And
Roid rage, though. It's such a thing. Yeah, we've definitely experienced it.
Yeah.
With people that we know who's been on steroids, who have been really, really nice people who you wouldn't have noticed them kind of having those anger issues before, and then the smallest thing and they'd flip, and it was unusual for them as well. It wasn't a trait that you would have seen them have before.
And that's it. Like loads of folk listen to this, and I know myself, and I'm sure yourself, we definitely don't think of ourselves as having like terrible patterns of behaviour now. But once you start introducing massively altering substances into your body, you lose the run of yourself, and you don't know who you're going to become.
Yep.
And it's not gonna make you happy.
No.
It's not going to make you happy.
No, exactly, because especially when people are using things like testosterone, that does increase aggression.
Yeah.
It increases anger, it does increase aggression. So if you are actually taking something like that, of course that's the effect that it's going to have,
No, of course.
And you could be the nicest person in the world and never get angry, never like lose your temper like that. But like you say, when you're then introducing a hormone like that, you've got no idea how you're going to react,
No, absolutely. So we obviously talk about not being that guy,
Yep.
but we also want to have like sort of men, like how to be better men. That's a huge part of it. And I learned a lot of that in gyms. I learned how to be respectful, how to look after myself, how to be a better member of a community, how to not be selfish. Like all of that was part of my training in that environment. So let's talk about green flags. Like what green flags are there for like male role models in gym spaces?
I think it's important to say right off the bat that I think it's a green flag regardless of genders or anything. If someone is pursuing being better physically in terms of bettering their fitness and their health, I think there's quite a lot of negative connotations. And like you said, we've covered a lot of things that are maybe not so great about the space and potential environments, but looking after yourself is a positive, and holding yourself to a high standard or being disciplined with that stuff is a good thing, and it will leak into other parts of your life and have a positive influence there. But outside of that, I guess going into your behaviours within a gym space, regardless of what kind of gym that is or how new a member you are, I think not encroaching on other people's space, being willing to step forward and help someone out if they really need it, and not thinking you're going to be a bad person for doing that, but by helping a barbell off of them or helping them if they really need them, rather than putting hands on that person as themselves, making sure you're not encroaching on their space by harassing them by just staring the whole time. Again, like humans will look around, we'll look at people, and I think a lot of people also want human interaction, and I think it's a massive positive that can come from a gym, and especially a gym with a strong culture, but knowing that there's a line and you do not want to cross that line and start making people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure, because we spoke about this in terms of like, if you did see someone who you maybe did want to ask out on a date in the gym, a lot of people wouldn't do that now, but how do you do that, in a like nice way? And you were saying like, if you did go over and approach someone and say, hi, do you mind if I give you my number? And they say no, saying, okay, really sorry, walking away. That's okay.
An understanding, be able to take rejection.
Key.
You like, I'm really sorry, thank you for your time, goodbye, and not persisting, not taking no for an answer, not then being aggressive.
Yeah, because it's fine to flirt.
Yeah.
It's fine to flirt. And like in a gym environment, it's a big social space as well. It is a place where cultures can emerge. Like I know that I've like gone on dates with people from gyms that have led to like really fruitful relationships.
Yeah, we met in the gym, know.
And you also know as well that if you are someone who really values that work ethic and physical fitness as a whole, there might be a higher chance of meeting someone who shares that same passion and discipline and lifestyle as you in that space. But like Iona said there, it's understanding how to approach that situation. And if no is the answer, no is the answer.
Yeah.
And respecting that.
Yeah,
just
for
respect. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And if you do fancy someone, don't stand outside and stare at their Zumba
Don't just stare at them. Don't sit on a bike staring at them.
Guys, thank you so much for joining them. Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely loved your stories and your chat and your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.